In this lesson video, we will be dealing with the double blank as it pertains to multiple sentences. So many strategies you've used so far for the single blank sentence would actually pertain to a double blank as long as that double blank is just one sentence. But things get a little bit different when you have to deal with multiple sentences, such as 2, 3, or even 4 sentences, which sometimes show up on the double blank questions. So what's the strategy we want to use for these question types? Well, first off, you want to make sure that you read the entire paragraph first. Why? Well, there's a lot of information there, and the test writers know that they can use information to trick you, to divert you, to make you focus on what's not important. And what's actually important is maybe at the very end of the paragraph, even if it pertains to the very first blank. So you don't want to jump to conclusions, but you want to read the entire paragraph first. Figure out which blank is easiest to deal with, meaning it's easiest for you to come up with your own word for. And again, come up with your own word. Make sure you look at the entire paragraph. Don't just look at the words around the blank. That way you'll jump to conclusions. And of course, come up with this big picture. Again, big picture is important. What's not important are the words right around the blank sometimes, because if you focus just on those, you'll have a sort of tunnel vision of the entire question. So let's take an example here. Now, this example is not the only way you will see a double blank with multiple sentences arranged. Here I have 3 sentences. The blanks are kind of close together. Sometimes they'll be spread apart, or sometimes they'll come at the very end. But again, the point is you want to take in the entire paragraph and look for that big meaning, not just jump to conclusions. And whatever you do, don't just start plugging in answer choices, because that, of course, will bias your interpretation of the paragraph. So let's take a look at this. The scientist's work is based on blank. Yet when the media reports on a scientific breakthrough, it is apt to overlook the years in which a scientist had to blank numerous hypotheses to arrive at. Now I want to stop right around there. At this point, I think many test takers want to already start figuring out what goes in the first or second blank. And since there's not much context, what they'll do is they'll start plugging in these answer choices. And they'll try to create a meaning, something that kind of makes sense. But once you do that, you're putting your foot into a quicksand, something that kind of pulls you in, and that's very difficult to get out of, because it's very difficult to unthink what you thought, meaning that you're suddenly interpreting the paragraph in a certain way, and you've only read to about this point. So a good strategy, again, is to cover up the answer choices and read the entire thing. So let's continue where that arrow is. Arrive at a single theory able to withstand scientific scrutiny. In essence, the whole idea of a breakthrough presupposes a sudden moment of enlightenment, a falsehood. Aha, the idea of a breakthrough is a falsehood. That's important. You take those 2 ideas and you go to the first blank. Aha, the scientist's work is actually not based on this falsehood of a sudden breakthrough, sudden moment of enlightenment, but it's something that's the opposite of that, something that's based on incremental change. Slow growth would be a good word or words to come up with your own blank. And again, using information we learned from those 1 blank lessons, notice the shift there to show us that there's a contrast between the scientist's actual work and what the media reports, this falsehood. Now at this point, it's a lot easier for me to get answers to the second blank. Notice I didn't deal with the second, or rather the first blank first, because it was the first blank, but because it was easier to contrast with the clue that actually came at the very bottom of the text completion. Now, once I've done this, you can always make sure, are these ones right or are they wrong? But what I like to do is to not take yourself out of the moment so much and to actually try to solve both blanks based on your own words. And then if you want to be 100% confident, you can go through the other answer choices as well. So that's what we're going to do. So for the second blank, it is apt to overlook the years in which a scientist had to blank numerous hypotheses to arrive at a single theory. Well, the media tells a falsehood, therefore it is apt or likely to overlook the years in which the scientists had to work slowly and methodically. So we already have a meaning now. The scientists had to methodically work with numerous hypotheses. You don't have to come up with this wonderful, perfect word, but one that is close enough. So let's look at the answer choices. Carefully confirm, and E is systematically reject. You may be tempted by carefully confirm because that word carefully and methodically is perfect. But let's look at the second word here. Now, of course, we can test these answer choices because we've already done the thinking and we're not plugging them in from the get-go and letting them do the thinking for us. So carefully confirm. Would you confirm hypotheses to arrive at one that actually makes sense? No, you would deal with and entertain many of them, but you would go through them, test them out, disregard them, and sort of the last one left would be the one that leads to this moment of breakthrough, which is actually, again, based on all this hard, slow, methodical work. Therefore, you would not be confirming. That doesn't make sense to confirm these hypotheses to arrive at a single one. The single one is the one that wins out. Therefore, you would be systematically rejecting. So now we're able to get to the correct answer. As I promised, though, we will deal with these other answer choices. Closely safeguard. You're not protecting these hypotheses. You're testing them out and rejecting them and going with the one that actually can withstand scientific scrutiny. That's single theory. So we can get rid of F. And then going back to the first blank, we know that a momentous revelation is consistent with the media story, and B is an example of something that just really isn't mentioned anywhere. That is a lucky coincidence, and we can get rid of it. Okay, now that was very specific towards the end there. And of course, every text completion is idiosyncratic. It's its own beast, its own thing. But there are these general strategies that will help you out. So therefore, when you face a multiple sentence, double blank text completion, unless you think the first blank is just very obvious, and sometimes it may be based on the context, make sure to read the entire paragraph to get a sense of that big picture. And once you get that, you'll notice that, hey, I'm basing that big picture based on these clues that come from various parts of the sentence, not just based on a word that's right next to the blank. And of course, once you figured out what these clues are, deal with the blank that is easiest to come up with your own word for. That's the key. Come up with your own word, and of course, if necessary, cover up the answer choices so they don't do the thinking for you.